She walked like a ghost between the shelves of a dusty roadside store, her face calm, her eyes frozen, but a storm of terror hiding underneath. No one knew her name. No one knew she had been kidnapped. No one knew the man behind her was not her father but her captor. But when she saw the roar of motorcycles passing outside, she made a decision that would either save her life or end it. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe, because what happens next is a flavor of courage you've never tasted before. Lila had always believed the world had more sweet moments than bitter ones, more warm flavors than cold, but on that chilling evening everything she knew shattered in the blink of an eye. She had been walking home from school, humming softly, thinking about the strawberry ice cream her mother had promised to buy her as a weekend treat. The street was usually alive with laughter, kids racing their bikes, neighbors arguing playfully over barbecue grills, and dogs barking at passing cars, but that day felt strangely hollow, as if the world had taken a long breath and forgotten to exhale. Lila noticed a van parked across the road, plain and unmarked, but she didn't think much of it until the door slid open and a rough hand snatched her faster than she could scream. The cloth over her face smelled like chemicals, numbing her senses, turning her thoughts cold, freezing every part of her innocence. When she woke, her wrists were tied, her throat dry, and a stranger's eyes stared at her like she was nothing more than prey. The kidnapper, a man named Gray, believed he had planned everything perfectly. He had watched her for weeks, chosen a quiet route, a weak moment, and a place where no one would look for her. He spoke little, only giving commands, only tightening ropes, only reminding her that no one was coming for her. But Lila was not the type of child who melted under fear. She was the type who froze it, shaped it, found a flavor inside it that could still fight. She studied everything around her, the pattern of the motel room wallpaper, the way the sun slanted through the blinds, the times Gray left, the times he watched, and the moments he became careless. But her biggest chance came unexpectedly when Gray decided to take her out. He needed supplies, he said. No one would suspect them if she walked calmly, quietly, with her hood up and her eyes down. He warned her that one wrong word, one loud breath, and he would make her disappear forever. Lila nodded, but inside her mind plans spun like sugar in a cotton candy machine. She needed a signal, a silent one, a frozen clue that only someone with courage could recognize. Outside the store, in the distance, the rumble of engines rolled like thunder across the highway. A pack of bikers approached, their jackets patched, their expressions tough, the kind of men people often avoided because they looked like trouble. But Lila had seen them before. Not these exact riders, but riders like them. Bikers who delivered toys to sick kids at the hospital. Bikers who raised money for local shelters. Bikers who believed that courage had flavors most people couldn't taste. If anyone would notice her silent plea, she believed it would be men like them. Gray took her inside the small general store, keeping a firm grip on her shoulder. Lila kept her face blank, like frost on a winter window. Gray spoke to the cashier, demanding supplies with a tone that carried hidden violence. Lila scanned the room for cameras, exits, opportunities, anything that could help her. Then the bell above the door jingled as two bikers stepped inside, one tall with sunburnt cheeks, the other with eyes that seemed to read every corner of a room. They were just getting bottled water and snacks for the road, unaware that a kidnapped girl was standing 10 feet away from them. Lila inhaled, steady and controlled, and remembered something her teacher once said: the bravest signals are the quiet ones. She looked at the bikers just for a second, then positioned her hands in front of her body, palms outward, fingers together. It was a silent emergency signal she had learned from a school safety video months earlier. No words, no noise. Just a frozen clue dropped into the world, hoping someone would taste the fear hidden underneath. The taller biker, Hawk, noticed first. Not the signal, but the stiffness in her posture. Something about her didn't match the scene. Kids didn't stand like statues. Kids didn't keep their eyes glued to the floor with the kind of discipline that comes from terror. He nudged the other biker, Ridge, who immediately noticed the grip Gray had on her shoulder. It wasn't a parental grip. It was possession. Control. Ridge watched carefully and saw Lila shift her hand again, the signal clearer this time, her eyes flicking up just enough to show a depth of fear that no child could fake. Ridge subtly nodded to her, his face unchanged, but Lila saw it. She saw the spark, the moment courage tasted her message. Gray finished paying and dragged her toward the door. The bikers followed, pretending to mind their own business. Outside, the sun was lower, shadows longer, and the rumbling engines of the other bikers still warming in the parking lot. Gray tightened his hold on Leela. She winced. That was the final confirmation the bikers needed. Ridge quietly whispered into the small mic hidden in the collar of his jacket, alerting the rest of the group without turning his head. They had a code for situations like this. They had rescued runaways before, intervened in abuse cases, and once stopped a trafficking attempt on a deserted highway. They weren't vigilantes, but they weren't bystanders either. They called themselves the Iron Comets, and courage was the flavor they served wherever they went. Gray pushed Leela toward the van, fumbling for the keys, but the bikers were already moving. Hawk stepped directly behind Gray, acting casual, looking at his own bike but ready. Ridge walked toward the opposite direction, circling. Another biker, Blaze, cut off the van's path without seeming suspicious. Gray became agitated, sensing something but unsure what. He opened the van door and shoved Leela inside, but before he could close it, Hawk pretended to trip, slamming his shoulder into Gray with the full weight of a grown man. Gray stumbled back, cursing, reaching for something inside his coat. But that was a mistake. Ridge grabbed Leela from the van and pulled her behind the row of bikes as Blaze roared his engine loud enough to drown her frightened cry. Gray lunged forward, yelling that they had no idea who they were messing with, but the bikers did not flinch. Hawk stepped between Gray and Leela, standing like a wall carved out of steel. More bikers gathered, blocking Gray's view, forming a barrier of leather muscle and unwavering intent. Gray pulled out a knife, but in front of 12 bikers it looked like nothing more than a toothpick threatening a hurricane. Hawk didn't even back up. He called out to the store owner to dial 911 while the bikers closed in from all sides. Gray tried to run. Blaze blocked him. Gray tried to swing. Ridge caught his wrist and twisted it with controlled force until the knife clattered to the ground. Gray tried to reach the van again, but a biker kicked the door shut so hard the metal groaned. It took less than 40 seconds for Gray to be pinned face down on the pavement, shouting empty threats that the wind carried away. Leela, now wrapped in Hawk's jacket like a shield of warmth, finally broke down. She didn't cry loudly. She cried silently, in small trembling breaths that shivered through her like the last cold of winter melting away. Ridge knelt in front of her, not touching her until she nodded that it was okay. He asked simple questions: her name, if she was hurt, if she knew where she lived. Leela told them everything in a voice so small it felt like it belonged to someone who had used every ounce of energy just to hold on to hope. Police arrived minutes later, sirens slicing through the quiet evening. They took Gray into custody, praising the bikers for stepping in. But Ridge shook his head. He said the real hero was the girl who gave the frozen clue in the first place. Leela was reunited with her parents, who rushed to the scene in tears, hugging her with trembling hands that wouldn't let go. Her mother sobbed thanks to the bikers, her father shook every hand he could reach, and Leela hugged Ridge one last time before leaving. She whispered that she would never forget the moment someone finally tasted her silent cry and chose courage. Days later, the Iron Comets got a letter in the mail. It was from Leela. She thanked them again and wrote that strawberries used to be her favorite flavor, but now she believed courage had a flavor too. She described it as strong, a little wild, and warm enough to melt even the coldest fear. The bikers framed the letter in their clubhouse, a reminder that sometimes the smallest signals carry the loudest messages, and that heroes don't always come in shiny uniforms. Sometimes they come roaring down the highway on 2 wheels, ready to serve the boldest flavor of courage when the world needs it most. And somewhere in that town, every time a motorcycle rumbled down the road, Leela's heart beat a little stronger, knowing that courage never travels quietly, and it never forgets the people who call for it. The story of her frozen clue spread far across the state, inspiring people, reminding them to watch for the quiet signals, because sometimes saving a life begins with seeing what others overlook. And the Iron Comets rode on, their engines echoing a promises that courage, no matter how cold the world becomes, will always be a flavor worth serving. Now tell me in the comments, from which part of the country are you watching this video?